kinds of non-practical ways are undermining America's dream. 700,000 jobs is just the beginning. It's the floor. It's not the limit. And to those of you who seek a single tunnel view of how we run this country, have mercy on those who are in need. This is a wrong direction. Sit down at the bargaining table. Let's reasonably assess what we need to do and stop putting your ideas on the back of Americans who need to be able to have the American dream. I yield back.
Gentleman from Georgia.
Madam Speaker, I yield myself 16 seconds to point out the irony of being lectured on job creation by the crowd that left us $14 trillion in debt and mortgaged our children's future. This bill is about responding to our children's needs. This bill is about providing a better day tomorrow than we have today. I stand proudly in support of it, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentlewoman from New York.
Madam Speaker, I yield 2.5 minutes to the gentleman from Vermont, former member of the Rules Committee, Mr. Welch.
Gentleman from Vermont is recognized for 1 minute.
I thank the gentlelady. The House passed H.R. 1 with the Republican majority. It can't get it through the Senate. They're frustrated. Their responsibility to be direct with the people who supported their passage of H.R. 1. And being direct with those folks is telling them they have a problem in the Senate. The reason they have a problem in the Senate is because the Senate has a problem with the bill. Coming into this House of Representatives as a political gambit to pass a let's pretend bill. Let's pretend if the House passes it, it becomes law without Senate action. Let's pretend that if the House passes it, it becomes law without the Senate or the President signing it. That is misleading and not being straight with the folks who supported H.R. 1. Tell them the truth. They have a problem with the Senate. Now, there's a reason they have a problem with the Senate. H.R. 1 is a bill designed to fail. It will not address the deficit. It will reduce spending in some areas. If you're low income and getting heating assistance, you'll lose some money. If you're an oil company that's making $55 billion in tax breaks from people, you'll continue to receive it. If you have the war practice of putting our 2 wars, Afghanistan and Iraq, on the credit card, that will continue. What H.R. 1 did was target low-income folks, middle-class folks, and it left all the other aspects of the budget off the table that have to be on the table if we're going to get to fiscal balance. Number 2, H.R. 1 was loaded with political hand grenades that were designed to make this thing blow up, and that's what's happening in the Senate. Things like ending National Public Radio or Planned Parenthood, getting in debate about choice and abortion. All of those are issues that are vitally important, legitimate to be debated. But why put them on a bill where the objective of the bill is to help bring us into fiscal balance? That's a self-conscious decision, it's a willful decision, and it's a decision that has implications, and you're seeing it played out in the United States Senate. H.R. 1 will not succeed in the challenge we face, getting us to fiscal balance. And that is the problem that the majority in the House is having with that bill. Coming in here with a bill that's flatly, explicitly unconstitutional by its own language, not what the sponsors say the bill does, but what the bill says it does, allow the House, by its unilateral action, to pass legislation is unconstitutional, it has no merit, and it is simply a way of trying to avoid responsibility. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Georgia.
Madam Speaker, I yield myself 15 seconds, and I wish I had more time to refute that misdirection. What we're asking here is that we pass the only bill that has been passed in either House of Congress. I don't care if the Senate passes H.R. 1 or not. Pass something. Do I need to bring the chart back up of what the Senate has done already? They've done nothing. They need to do something. This bill prods them to do it. I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentlewoman from New York.
Madam Speaker, I yield 30 seconds to the gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Cohen.
Gentleman from Tennessee is recognized for 30 seconds.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm just totally confused. I was in New York a couple of weeks ago, and I saw a play called The Bengal Tiger and the Baghdad Zoo. Robin Williams was a star. I wrote him a letter. Said, reality, what a concept. It even exists in Congress. Robin, I'm sorry. I was wrong. It doesn't exist today. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Gentleman from Georgia.
Balance of my time.
Gentleman continues to reserve. Gentlewoman from New York.
Madam Speaker, I'm prepared to close if the gentleman has no further speakers.
I have no further speakers.
Right. Madam Speaker, If we defeat the previous question, I will offer an amendment to the rule to provide immediately after the House adopts this rule, it bring up S. 388, a bill to prohibit members of Congress and the President from receiving pay during government shutdowns. As we face the possibility of a shutdown and discuss how to prevent and deal with it, there's one point on which we all agree, that members of Congress should not be paid during a government shutdown. The Republican bill we're about to bring up ties this bipartisan pay proposal to a partisan bill that isn't going anywhere. We could pass the member pay bill today and clear it for the President, simply take the Senate bill from the desk. Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to insert the text of the amendment in the record along with extraneous material immediately prior to the vote on the previous question. I urge my colleagues to vote no and defeat the previous question so we can debate and pass a bill that actually does something useful, and that is deal with the pay of the President and the Congress, and actually has a chance, because it has already passed the Senate, of being enacted into law. I urge a no vote on the rule and yield back the balance of my time.
Gentlewoman yields back. Gentleman from Georgia.
Madam Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman is recognized.
This has been an interesting experience for me as a freshman member of Congress and a co-sponsor of the underlying legislation. I haven't had my motives impugned quite as much in the previous days as I've had them impugned today. We're trying to make a difference. We're trying to move the ball forward. I wish our I'm Just a Bill song went on to talk about what you do when you have an intransigent Senate that can't act, a Senate that's paralyzed with inaction. I wish that was part of the song, but it's not. And in 7 days, Madam Speaker, the United States government shuts down. I just want to make that clear. In 7 days, the United States government shuts down if the Senate can't pass a bill and we can't get together and define a solution. And that means our men and women in uniform don't get paid. That means our USDA inspectors that inspect all the meat and the chicken that we eat, they won't go to work, and those products won't come to the grocery store. It's not a little deal. It's a big deal. It's a big deal, and this is a step in the direction towards finding a solution. Now, this rule provides for debate on that underlying resolution. We'll get to that this afternoon. I look forward to that. I would ask all my colleagues on the left and the right, the conservatives and the liberals of all stripes, to support this rule so that we can move forward and debate in an open fashion the underlying resolution. With that, I yield back the balance of my time, Madam Speaker, and I move the previous question.
Gentleman yields back. All time has expired. The question is on ordering the previous question on the resolution. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it.
Madam Speaker, on that I ask the yeas and nays.
The yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this question will be postponed. Pursuant to House Resolution 189 and Rule 18, the Chair declares the House and the Committee of the Whole House of the State of the Union for the further consideration of H.R. 658. Will the gentleman from Kansas, Mr. Yoder, kindly take the chair?
We ready? The House is in the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union for the further consideration of H.R. 658, which the clerk will report by title.
A bill to amend Title 49 United States Code to authorize appropriations for the Federal Aviation Administration for fiscal years 2011 through 2014 to streamline programs, create efficiencies, reduce waste, and improve aviation safety and capacity, to provide stable funding for the national aviation system and for other purposes.
When the Committee of the Whole House rose on Wednesday, March 31, 2011, Amendment Number 31, printed in House Report 112-46, offered by the gentleman from California, Mr. Schiff, had been disposed of. Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, proceedings will now resume on those amendments printed in House Report 112-46, on which further proceedings were postponed in the following order. Amendment number 27 by Mr. Pierce of New Mexico. Amendment number 29 by Mr. Schiff of California. Amendment number 20 by Mr. Sessions of Texas. Amendment number 21 by Mr. LaTourette of Ohio. And Amendment 24 by Mr. Schuster of Pennsylvania. The Chair will reduce to 5 minutes the time for any electronic vote after the first vote in the series. The unfinished business is the request for a recorded vote on Amendment 27, printed in House Report 112-46 by the gentleman from New Mexico, Mr. Pierce, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the ayes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 27, printed in House Report number 112-46, offered by Mr. Pierce of New Mexico.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted. Sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device.
The U.S. House is finishing up work that they started yesterday. 5 amendment votes to the 4-year FAA reauthorization bill and final passage on that as well. This is an amendment proposed by Steve Pierce of New Mexico. One of 5 amendments that will get votes here. They voted on a number of them yesterday, and again, final passage on the FAA bill coming up shortly. The House bill is a 4-year extension. The Senate version is a 2-year extension, so the difference will have to be worked out in committee should the bill pass here today. Much of the morning, though, this morning, once again, on the House floor, they're talking about the fiscal year 2011 budget in the form of a bill that would become law if and only if the Senate fails to act by next Wednesday on H.R. 1. H.R. 1, you may remember, is the budget bill that was passed, the spending bill that was passed by the House back in February 19th, the one with $61 billion in cuts to it. So they spent a good deal of the morning talking about the rule for debate on H.R. 1255. That's the bill that's coming up for debate today. It would basically, in absence of any Senate-passed legislation by next week, declare as law that spending bill, H.R. 1. So we will see more about that as the discussions continue off the floor on how to resolve federal spending for the rest of 2011. In fact, we got an update on this morning's Washington Journal on where things stand.
Anna Palmer is with us. She is the House leadership reporter for Roll Call. Ms. Palmer, thanks for starting out Friday morning with us.
Thanks for having me.
Why don't we start with where things stand? What do you know about the state of negotiations at this point?
Sure. Well, publicly, at least, as you kind of read the headlines, you have a real posturing from the Speaker that is saying that no deal is imminent. However, what we are hearing is that a deal is close. They're looking at kind of zeroing in on this $33 billion in cuts, and that the kind of the sticky issue right now is still the policy waivers, whether or not those riders are going to be in the final deal.
And explain what the policy riders do.
Sure. And particularly for conservative House Republicans, this is a very big deal. Even where the number might be a little bit negotiable, the policy riders are very important. These are issues like defunding National Public Radio, defunding Planned Parenthood, and things such as that.
Well, you say the number might be negotiable, but how negotiable is the number for Tea Party supporters who brought some of the 87 freshmen to the House?
Sure. I think yesterday there was in the Capitol, or right outside the Capitol, there was a rally, and they were saying, you know, cut it or shut it was the kind of refrain. So for them, there's not a lot of wiggle room here. And when you talk to conservative Republicans, you know, 129 of them voted for the last short-term spending bill that was, you know, that went to the president, and it's very unlikely that Boehner will be able to get them to support a package if there's only $33 billion in cuts.
Well, then explain your headline, because another meeting that happened, this one behind closed doors, was a meeting with the Speaker and the freshman members yesterday. Your headline, Freshmen Place Faith in Boehner.
I think when talking to freshmen coming out of that meeting, They feel like leadership is listening to them. Boehner did not give them any more details, though, about kind of where the final number was or what the negotiation tactics were. However, I think because they feel like he and the rest of the GOP leadership team has been open and kind of keeping them in the loop, they're giving him the benefit of the doubt so far.
And what kind of pressure is on the Speaker right now?
He's in a tough position. I think what you're seeing is, a looming deadline in midnight April 8th for a government shutdown. It doesn't look like that's going to happen. I think the sentiment that we keep, kind of getting towards is there's a deal that is going to come out probably close to the deadline. And, Boehner has a tough line to find in terms of, being able to appease the conservatives, but also find a number that Senate Democrats and President Barack Obama will sign into law.
And that number seems to be $33 billion.
So far, that's the number that everybody's, kind of talking about.
Well, thanks for bringing us up to date. Anna Palmer covers the leadership for Roll Call. You can find her at rollcall.com. Thanks for starting our morning off for us.
Thanks a lot.
And we'll certainly hear more about federal spending on the House floor in just a bit. They've begun a series of what could be up to 9 votes. First of all, finishing off work on the FAA reauthorization bill. This is the first of 5 amendment votes, and they will have a motion to recommit and final passage coming up. And then back to a bill that they started debate on just a short while ago, a bill that would declare the H.R. 1, the $61 billion in budget cuts that they passed in February, would declare that the law of the land if the Senate and President Obama didn't act on the spending measure by next Wednesday. Now, the current short-term spending measures, you may have heard in that conversation, ends a week from today, Friday, April the 8th. So more debate, a vote on the rule for that is coming up in this series of what could be up to nine votes. About this FAA bill, though, the White House has issued a veto threat. Here's what the Associated Press wrote yesterday about the bill. They said the White House wrote in a statement that if the funding were appropriated at the levels proposed in the bill, that's the FAA bill, the safe and efficient movement of air traffic in the air and on the ground would be degraded today and in the future. That's from the White House and their opposition to some parts of the FAA reauthorization. this first 15-minute vote the first of 5 amendment votes on the FAA reauthorization bill, and then a motion to recommit and final passage on that bill, and then on to some procedural votes dealing with a bill that would seek to approve the House's H.R. 61, H.R. 1, the $61 billion in spending cuts measure that they passed in February, would seek to approve that for fiscal year 2011 if the Senate fails to act on a spending bill by next Wednesday. In the earlier debate leading up to this series of votes, The Hill reports that Paul Tonko, one of the speakers on the floor, Democrat from New York, said Republican plans are appropriate given that it's April Fool's Day. He said, quote, "They're ignoring our founding document, mocking its principles and attempts to circumvent 222 years of history," he said, adding that Republicans are hoping that H.R. 1 can, quote, "just become law like magic." Meanwhile, one of the sponsors of the bill, Rob Woodall, defended the measure. He said it's designed to put pressure on the White House and to Congress to negotiate a spending agreement. Here's some of what Representative Woodall had to say on the floor today. Quote, "It gives the Senate an opportunity to come out from under its paralyzing inaction and pass H.R. 1. It says that if the Senate does not, the Senate fails to act, that Congress will not get paid." And that from Rob Woodall earlier today on the House floor. 4 more amendment votes will follow this one on Steve Pierce of New Mexico, an amendment proposed to the FAA reauthorization bill. Final passage vote coming up. The House began work on this yesterday. Thursday night, they accepted by voice vote a number of amendments, including one that would allow air shows to take place in Cleveland at the same time the Cleveland Indians are playing nearby. Another one would require the FAA to continue discussions about safety at Santa Monica Airport, and another would require airports to inform small companies about pending contracts. So they'll finish up work on this and then move on to a couple of procedural votes on the bill dealing with the fiscal year 2011 budget, a bill that would declare the $61 billion H.R. 1 passed a month ago, the law of the land, if the Senate and the President don't act on the measure by next Wednesday. John Boehner tweets this morning that, quote, now 41 days since GOP House passed the bill to cut spending and keep government running through September, Democratic Senate still hasn't passed the bill. He also tweeted earlier about the jobs report saying it's welcome news, but Washington needs to do more about the uncertainty facing job creators. You can follow members of Congress on our website, twitter.com/cspan, and you can link onto the list of members of Congress on the jobs front. The Labor Department report, the White House said today, the report that the unemployment rate dipped to 8.8% is, quote, encouraging. In a statement, economic advisor Austin Goolsbee said, quote, we're seeing signs that the initiatives put in place by this administration, such as the payroll tax cut and business incentives for investment, are creating the conditions for sustained growth and job creation. The figures, the unemployment rate for March dropped to 8.8%. The Labor Department reported that this morning, and the economy adding 216,000 jobs last month. One slight bit of bad news for it, the long-term unemployment rate ticked up in the month of March. This first 15-minute vote, this is the first of 5 amendment votes to the FAA reauthorization bill. The bulk of the debate was yesterday in the U.S. House. Final passage vote on that coming up, and other votes as well. This is the last legislative day for the House this week, obviously. We want to let you know about some of our weekend programming. On the C-SPAN networks, earlier this week, the Supreme Court heard oral argument in a case, Walmart v. Dukes. This is a gender discrimination case against Walmart over pay and promotions for as many as 1.5 million current and former female employees. The issue before the court is whether this large group of women should be allowed to band together in a lawsuit against Walmart, a class action lawsuit. We'll have the oral argument for you. First, you can hear it on radio this afternoon, 4 p.m. Eastern, cspanradio.org, or 90.1 in Washington, Baltimore area, and XM channel 132. And then tomorrow on C-SPAN, we'll show it to you in the evening, leading our prime time on Saturday. It'll run at 7 p.m. Eastern, the Supreme Court oral argument.
On this vote, the yeas are 207, the nays are 215. Motion is not adopted. The unfinished business is the request for recorded vote on amendment number 29, printed in House Report 112-46 by the gentleman from California, Mr. Schiff, on which further proceedings were postponed, on which the noes prevailed by a voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 29, printed in House Report number 112-46, offered by Mr. Schiff of California.
Recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the requested for recorded vote will rise and be counted. Sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is in order. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote.
Adam Schiff, Democrat from California. This is a vote on his amendment to the 4-year extension, reauthorization of the FAA Programs and Policy Bill. And 3 more amendment votes will follow, final passage coming up. The White House has issued potential veto threat against the bill. One of the reasons is based on an amendment that would make it more difficult for airline and railroad workers to unionize. The Associated Press writes that that labor provision would overturn a new National Mediation Board rule approved last year that allows employees to form a union by simple majority of those voting. Under the old rule, workers who didn't vote were treated as no votes. The AP writes that it's one of several contentious issues that have arisen in the debate over this FAA bill. The White House has also objected to about $4 billion in funding cuts the bill would make, which could slow down the nation's transition from an air traffic system based on World War II radar-based technology to one based on GPS technology. So the House here finishing up work on that FAA bill.
On this vote, the yeas are 178 and the nays are 243, and the amendment is not adopted. The unfinished business is a request for a recorded vote on amendment number 20, printed in House Report 11246 by the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Sessions, on which proceedings were postponed, on which the noes prevailed by a voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 20, printed in House Report number 112-46, offered by Mr. Sessions of Texas.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted. A sufficient number having risen, the recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their vote by electronic device, and this is a 5-minute vote.
Two more amendment votes to follow this one. This is all related to the FAA reauthorization bill. Pete Sessions' amendment would prevent funds from being used to enforce the Davis-Bacon Act prevailing wage requirements. 5-minute vote on the House floor. Two more amendment votes and final passage coming up, and then some procedural votes coming up on what's being called the Government Shutdown Prevention Act. Looking ahead into next week, kind of a sneak preview from CQ this morning. They write that before the next spending bill reaches the Senate floor, the chamber is likely to clear a House-passed bill, H.R. 4, that would repeal a 1099 information reporting requirement contained in the 2010 health care overhaul law. The Senate is expected to vote on passage of that measure before the weekly caucus lunches next Tuesday. CQ writes that after that, the Senate may continue debate on largely unrelated amendments to the pending small business measure. Meanwhile, they say House Republican leaders are optimistic that they may soon have the opportunity to shift the chamber's focus to other issues, including GOP proposals to rein in what they argue are unnecessary regulatory burdens. For example, CQ writes the House is expected to debate a resolution next week of disapproval that would turn back the net neutrality rules adopted by the FCC in December, barring fixed broadband service providers from blocking content and unnecessarily discriminating in transmitting network traffic. Just a look ahead to some of the things that might be on the way on the floor of the Senate and House.
On this vote, the yeas are 183 and the nays are 238. The amendment is not adopted. The unfinished business is the request for recorded vote on amendment number 21, printed in House Report 11246 by the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. LaTourette, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the ayes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 21, printed in House Report number 112-46, offered by Mr. LaTourette of Ohio.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request will rise and vote be counted. A sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their vote by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote.
An amendment by Steve LaTourette. This deals with unions and transportation workers. David Hawkins, in his daily CQ roll call daily briefing, talks about that this is legislation, the overall bill is legislation that will modernize the air traffic control system, finance airport construction, and maintain subsidies for flights to remote towns, and thereby setting up negotiations with the Senate on what he writes could become the first important domestic policy bill enacted by this Congress. And about this amendment, David Hawkins writes, this amendment would strip language designed to make it more difficult for unions to organize airline workers. He says it will draw some GOP votes, but will come up short of adoption. So it'll be interesting to watch the count here.
On a vote of 206 to 220, the nays have it and the amendment fails. The unfinished business is a request for a recorded vote on Amendment 24, printed in House Report 11246 by the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Schuster, on which further proceedings were postponed and which the ayes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 24, printed in House Report number 112-46, offered by Mr. Schuster of Pennsylvania.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted. A sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their vote by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote.
Well, the failure of Steve LaTourrette's amendment could complicate somewhat the potential House-Senate conference on the FAA reauthorization bill and raise the level of threat in terms of a White House veto. And here's why. Steve LaTourrette's amendment would have preserved a rule issued last year by the National Mediation Board. That rule determines the outcome of a union election, talking about airline workers. House Republicans had included a provision in the underlying bill that would repeal the board's rule. They argued that it overturns long-time vote-counting practices. The Senate version of the bill does not include that provision. And CQ writes that the Obama administration upped the ante Wednesday night, threatening to veto the bill if it contains the provision to repeal the National Mediation Board rule. And with the failure of that amendment, it still contains that provision. Last amendment vote here. This is Bill Schuster of Pennsylvania's amendment, which would impose new legislative requirements on the FAA on their ability to propose or issue regulations which will delay important safety improvements. Final passage is next.
On this vote, the yeas are 215 and the nays are 209, and the amendment is adopted. The question is on the amendment in the nature of a substitute. As amended, those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. Accordingly, under the rule, the committee rises.
Mr. Chairman. Read that.